Hey guys, it's Alexandra from EyeLoveKnots.com. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make my Through the Window Afghan. This one is worked in worsted weight. I also have a super chunky version, which I'll link in the description box below. You'll find the free crochet pattern for this also linked in the description box below, and I have several sizes to choose from. This Afghan features an inset mosaic stitch pattern here. It looks kind of intimidating, but it is worked in single crochets and chains, and then double crochets worked over those chains to create this raised section here. And I've named this series Through the Window on my blog because to me it looks like I'm looking through some window panes. I've worked this blanket up with solid colors, but this stitch pattern works really well with variegated yarns as the coordinating color, and then just the color that goes really well with it as your main color, which sits on top. I was inspired by my volume 1 Afghan square to pull the same exact colors for a more retro kind of look. After I worked it up in this big Afghan, it kind of changes the vibe. It's not the same vibe from the Afghan square, but I still love the colors. It's kind of tropical, which is also in the ballpark of what I'm going for, so I'm happy with it. I also opted for a really bold border, which shows all the colors here that I've used in the Afghan. You could do it in one color, but this is Red Heart Super Saver. It is a worsted weight number 4 yarn. I have used buff as the main color throughout the whole blanket. That is this light brown color. We have spring green, real teal, I think, I'm not sure, carrot, cherry red, gold, and then I think this one is bright yellow. I will include all these in the description box below, so like for this blue that I'm not 100% sure on, I will be in the description box, so go ahead and check down in there. Gauge is not essential for this Afghan because you can just make it whatever size you want. It doesn't have to be specific dimensions, so go ahead and pull out your favorite worsted weight yarn and use that. For the main part of the Afghan, I'm going to be using a H8 5mm crochet hook. I love this ergonomic one that I got. This is clay and it's from Sienna's Boutique on Etsy. I've ordered a couple from her and I really love her hooks. I push my loops up pretty far up on my hook as I work, and I love that I'm able to send her a message when I'm ready to order and say, hey, can you make the clay start at a certain point on the crochet hook? And she just does a fantastic job. It does take about 4 weeks before the crochet hook arrives ready to go, but it is really great quality, beautiful design, so many designs that make it hard to choose from. The shaping is wonderful in your hand. It's got a little bit of weight to it, but not too bad. And the price is great. She's great. So if you're looking for a really nice crochet hook to treat yourself, I highly recommend checking out Sienna's Boutique. And I'll pop the link in the description box below for that. But again, this is just an H8 5mm crochet hook. That's what I like to use when I use Red Heart Super Saver. Because the size is not essential, the gauge is not essential. If you're more comfortable using maybe an I9 5.5, absolutely go with it. It's just going to change the size of the blanket and the yardage needed, so just take that into consideration. For the border, I'm going to switch down to a G6 4.25mm hook. This is just the size right below that H hook. And that is because the edges tend to ruffle because tensions vary, especially here on the sides. So I just go down a hook size, my border doesn't ruffle, and then I'm a happy camper. I will discuss this in a little bit more detail a little bit further on in the video, and it's not necessary, but it's just what I recommend. As I mentioned before, gauge is not terribly essential for this project unless the finished size of the Afghan is essential to you. If you don't care if it comes out a little bit smaller or a little bit bigger, then you don't need to take gauge, just go ahead and work. But if you want it to come out to a specific size, then you're going to want to take your gauge. So you're going to need a soft tape measure. For gauge, we're going to measure it over the single crochet rows, which are in between the color block. So not the rows that have chains or double crochets, but the ones in between it. Those are just simple single crochet all the way across 2 rows of that. So we're going to get the best gauge in there. You're going to want to measure from where a stitch stops. Let's see if I can pull this up. Looking here, you see the left leg of the V shape and the right leg of the V shape. You want to measure from right where that right leg ends and the left leg of the next stitch begins. Right there from that edge over to the same spot of the next stitch. That is 1 stitch. Over to the next spot of the next stitch, that is 2 stitches. You want to be consistent where you're measuring from, and you don't want to measure from the end of your blanket. That's going to change the gauge. So you want to measure somewhere in the middle of your blanket. Pick a spot and then just measure to the same spot all the way over. For this Afghan, 16 single crochets is going to equal 4 1/8 inches wide. Height wise, you're going to measure from the very first single crochet row or from any single crochet row within your blanket. You're going to measure where the single crochet row begins, the bottom of the stitches down here, all the way up to the top of the stitches. And for this gauge, 18 rows is going to equal 4 inches tall. So if gauge is essential to you and you've taken your gauge and it's measuring smaller than what I've stated, then you want to go up to a larger crochet hook and rework your sample. And if you're measuring larger, then you're going to want to go down to a smaller crochet hook and rework your sample. So rather than starting the whole entire Afghan, if gauge is essential to you, you want to make sure you are on the correct path, then you're going to want to work a small sample of about 20 to 25 stitches wide and take your width gauge. Then you can work it either the full 18 rows to make sure you're right on with 4 inches, or you can work 9 rows and see if you're measuring 2 inches. That'll equal the same. I am going to be showing you how to do this stitch pattern with a video clip from another project, so you're going to be seeing me use different color yarns, even a different yarn altogether. The stitch pattern is going to be worked exactly the same. You're going to change up the number of chains and the number of rows depending on the size that you are going to work. So my sample is going to be worked with a beginning chain of 31. But I'm going to go ahead and put up a chart that shows how many chains you're going to want to have depending on the size that you're working. I'm going to start with a slip knot. So I've pulled the tail end over my fingers here, wrap it around my index finger 2 times, hold the tension with my thumb and my middle finger, grab the loop on the left, pull it up over the other one but not off my finger. Grab the loop on the left now, pull it up over the other one and off my finger. And the tension is loose right here with the tail end, but it should also be tucked in there with my thumb and my middle finger. Then I will take my crochet hook, put it on the loop that's on my finger, pull it off, hold the working yarn in my right hand, and the tail end in my left, I'm going to pull that to normal tension. I'm going to start with a chain 31. To chain, we yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. That is 3 chains. I'm going to go ahead and continue working on my chains. I've finished my chains. Now I'm going to work a single crochet into the second chain from the hook and each chain all the way across. So we don't count the loop that's on our hook. And I have 1 chain, 2 chains, insert my hook right into the center of that chain, yarn over, pull through. There are 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert my hook into the center of the next chain, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert my hook into the center of the next chain, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. And I'm going to go ahead and continue single crocheting down the chain. Alright, there's the last chain. I'm going to go ahead and just hold the fabric and pull on that tail end to close up that hole. And I have now 30 single crochets worked. For row 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to simply single crochet into the very first stitch by inserting it into the stitch, picking up both loops from that top V shape and completing a single crochet. And then we'll continue single crocheting into each stitch all the way across, and you'll finish with 30 single crochets. I've come to my last stitch, and here's where I'm going to switch colors. So I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through. I have 2 loops on my hook, and I'm going to put this down for a moment. I'll grab my next color, which is going to be this darker blue, make a loop, have a tail end long enough I can weave in, and I'll grab my work here, put that loop on my hook, and pull it through both loops. That counts as the last yarn over and pull through of the stitch. And now we'll start working this next row with our blue color. So I'm just going to tighten down the gray a little bit, then I'll drop that and the tail end, pick up the new blue, chain 1, and turn. Our repeat is 4 rows. This row that we're about to start working here is the very first row from the repeat. So I am going to be changing colors to do a sort of striping here, but the repeat is going to be worked exactly the same no matter which colors I have. So this is the first row. We start with a single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. Then we chain 2, skip each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into the next 2 stitches, chain 2, skip each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and you'll continue that across, chain 2, skip each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And there we are. Next row is going to be chain 1, turn, same exact thing, single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches, chain 2, skip the chain space, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Chain 2, skip the next chain space, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, and continue this all the way across. Here I've made it to my last stitch, and I'm going to switch colors again here. So I'm going to insert my hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through. I have 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to pause here. I'm going to hold the tension of those 2 loops with my index finger here, and I'm holding the work with my thumb and my middle finger, and I'm dropping the blue. I'm going to reach down, pick up that gray. First thing, I can see it's come loose here, so I'm going to tighten it up so that looks like normal tension there. Then I have the blue yarn in my thumb and my middle finger because I want to hold tension on this stitch as well. And I'm going to naturally yarn over with the gray and pull it through these 2 loops. And I say naturally because you just want an even pull there, like as normal, natural as possible. Yarn over and pull it through. You don't want it to bunch up, you don't want it to be too loose, you just want it to lay naturally right there on the side of your work. Now you have the gray yarn ready to go. Chain 1 and turn. And we'll leave this float here, we'll crochet over it later and you won't even notice. The next row of our repeat is going to start with single crocheting to each of those first 2 single crochets. Then we're going to double crochet into each of those skipped stitches from 2 rows below. Start by yarning over. Then we want to push the chains to the back and move the stitches to the front. We don't want to work into these stitches here or around them, the chains. We want to work in front of them. So we've yarned over, we're going to insert our hook into that very first skip stitch, yarn over, pull through. There are 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Then we'll double crochet into that next stitch. Yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. And as we did that, we created 2 layers. So we have the chains on the back that have not been worked into at all, they've just been pushed to the back. And then we have the 2 double crochets we just worked into those skip stitches, which are going to lay right on top of those chains. We're going to single crochet into each of the next 2 single crochets, and once you do that, those double crochet stitches are attached, they're secured, they're not going to flip on you or anything, it's going to be even. We're going to do that again. We're going to push those chains to the back, pull those skip stitches to the front, yarn over, insert your hook into the first stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. The chains in the back have not been worked into, they're just pushed to the back. Double crochets are pushed to the front. And now we're going to single crochet into each of the next 2 single crochets. And this will allow those double crochets to just lay on top of the chains. Continue working in this repeat all the way down by double crocheting into each of those skipped stitches from 2 rows down. And then single crochet into each of those next 2 single crochets. And there we are, the third row of the repeat. Next row is going to be a chain 1, turn, single crochet into the first stitch, and each stitch all the way across. And here we've come to the very last stitch of the row. We want to switch colors because we work 2 rows per color. Insert our hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on our hook. We're going to pause here. I'm going to lay this down because I'm going to be switching to a different color that I don't already have here. I'm going to form a loop with a tail end long enough to weave in. Put that loop on my hook and pull it through. Then I'll tighten down that gray, drop the tail end, pick up the working yarn, chain 1 and turn. And now we begin the repeat all over again. So I'll recap that for you. We're going to start by working a single crochet into each of those first 2 stitches, then chain 2, skip each of the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, chain 2, skip the next 2 stitches, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And these are really easy to line up. You just want to make sure that the stitches you're working here line up with the colored stitches from 2 rows below. Those boxes will line up. If it's uneven, then perhaps you've added or missed a stitch. Go ahead and continue and pattern across. That's the first row of our repeat. Chain 1 and turn. Second row, single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches. Chain 2, skip the next chain space, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Chain 2, skip the next chain space, single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. Continue across. Here's my last stitch of the row, so I'm going to switch colors. I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on my hook. I'm going to hold the tension of the loops with my index finger from my right hand, hold the fabric there with my thumb and middle finger. Then I'm going to drop the blue. I'm going to switch to gray here, so I'm going to pick up the gray. I'm going to tighten it up in case it's loosened in that last stitch. And then I'm going to hold the current tail end with my thumb and middle finger from my left hand, just to hold the tension there. Then, as natural as possible, I'm going to yarn over with the new color and pull it through. I want it to lay evenly up the side. I don't want it to be too loose or too tight. Then I'm going to chain 1 with my new color and turn. And that float will just sit there, and as I mentioned, we'll put a border on and the floats won't even be an issue. The third row of the repeat is single crochet into each of the first 2 stitches, double crochet into each of those skip stitches from 3 rows down, making sure you push the chains to the back and you pull the stitches to the front. single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, then double crochet into each of those skip stitches from 2 rows down. So I yarn over, insert my hook right into the first skip stitch, picking up the stitch, and then I pull my hook forward so it doesn't work into or around those chains. Yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, pull my hook forward, and then complete my double crochet. Single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, double crochet into each of those next skip stitches from 2 rows down, single crochet into each of those next 2 stitches. Continue working across. That's the 3rd row of our repeat, and then just 1 more row left. Chain 1, turn, single crochet into the first stitch and each stitch all the way across. Here I've reached the last stitch of the row, insert my hook into that stitch, yarn over, pull through, and now I want to switch colors. I'm going to yarn over here with the new color and pull it through the loops on my hook. And I also want it to not be too tight or it will bunch my fabric up, and I don't want it to be too loose. So you can use your fingers to manipulate the fabric if you need more slack there. And then chain 1 and turn. And then I'll start my repeat all over again with single crochet into each of those first 2 stitches. To count these rows, you do it in 2s. The colors group themselves together. So there's 2 gray ones in the beginning, 2 dark blue, 2 gray, 2 light blue, 2 gray. So you'll count it just like that, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I'm going to go ahead and continue working off camera, but I'll put up a chart here showing how many rows you'll need depending on the size that you're working. So here's where I've switched down to my G6 4.25mm crochet hook. The border for this stitch, if you do it in the same hook as you did the rest, it will come out wavy. If you really want to continue with the same crochet hook, you can maybe try skipping a stitch as you work, but I'm just going to go down a hook size and work into each stitch. First I'm going to start with the chain 1, and then I'm going to turn. I'm going to try something a little bit different on my corner than what I normally do. I normally just start with a single crochet and then work around, and when I come back I end on my chains and I join. But I'm going to try to do it similar to a granny square, how you do your corner first. So I'm going to start by working a single crochet into that very first stitch. I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to work a single crochet back into that same exact stitch. When we work the corners, we need to increase on them so that they get larger but continue to lay flat. So we need to give them more stitches there than all the rest. The very top and the bottom are easiest to work into because there's already stitches there that have the V shape. They're really easy to see and to work into. We're just going to single crochet into each stitch there along the top, all the way across until we get to the very last stitch of the row. And this is my actual blanket, so it's lots of stitches. I am not going to work all of them on camera, so I will see you when I get to the end of the row. I have made it to the end of the row here, Not counting the very first stitch where we worked our corner or this last stitch of the row, the total number of stitches that you're going to have in the middle is going to be the total number of stitches across minus 2. So depending on the size that you're working, that is how you're going to figure out how many stitches you're going to have here. Now that we've reached this last corner, we need to increase again the same way as we did before. So we're going to work a single crochet in that stitch, chain 2, and then another single crochet back into that same exact stitch. And that's our second corner. Now I'm going to rotate my fabric so I can work down the side. This corner here that I made, it works for me. It's not puckering out, it's even, it's giving me a sort of square shape, which is what I want. I wanted a little bit more than a chain 1 in there so that I can have more space to work the next round's corner in there. But if you find that your corner is flaring out, it means it has too many stitches. So then I would suggest taking this out and going to a chain 1. If your corner is more rounded and you prefer something a little bit more square, you can do a chain 3. You might just have to play around with it and see what works. It can vary depending on your tension. Working up and down the sides is a little bit more tricky than the top and bottom. Working down and up the sides, for single crochet rows like we've worked, the rule is 1 single crochet per row. So that makes it a little bit easier here. You're going to see 2 different types of stitches here. This next one that we're about to work, when you insert directly into the center of that stitch, you get 2 loops on the side, similar to the V shape that you see normally. And then after that, you see a stitch that just looks like a hole. There are 2 loops in that, but it's much tighter so you can't see it. So you'll just work into the hole there. The very next one, you have the V shape, so you insert into the center of the stitch and you pick up 2 loops on your hook. And then the next one just looks like a hole and you insert right into the center. As you work on the sides, you want to work as close to the side edge as possible. Do not work in the middle of stitches because you're going to create a very large hole there. So work as closely to the side edge as you can and your side will be even and there won't be any big gaps in there. You're going to alternate all the way down the side. If you get lost and you're not sure if you have the stitches that you're supposed to have, working in the 2 colors really helps a lot because then you know that you're going to have 2 stitches on each color. So for this yellow, I have 1 stitch here that's the hole, 1 stitch here that is the V shape. Then I'm in the buff color and I have 1 stitch in the hole, 1 stitch in the V shape. Back in the yellow, 1 stitch in the hole, 1 stitch in the V shape. So that makes it a lot easier here just to make sure that you're working the correct amount of stitches on the side. I'm going to go ahead and continue working all the way down and I'm going to do it off camera because I have a very large blanket here. But the rule here for counting your stitches on the sides, you're going to take the total number of rows that you worked, then you're going to subtract 1, and that's going to be how many you're going to have here in the center, not including the very first stitch and the very last stitch where you're going to have corners worked. Alright, I've made it down the side of my blanket. Now I have just 1 stitch left here and that's where I'm going to work my next corner. So I will single crochet into that stitch, chain 2, and single crochet back into the same exact stitch. That's my 3rd corner. And now we're going to work across the opposite side of the foundation chain. This is where we began our blanket, and you work it very similar to how you did on the top. It's very similar to how you worked when you worked into the chain. You're just going to work into the center of it there, picking up those loops on your hook, and single crochet. Work into the center of the next stitch, And we'll just continue single crocheting into each stitch all the way across until we get to the very last stitch where we will work another corner. You'll have the same number of stitches across here that you did when you worked the top. I've worked all the way across the bottom. I have one stitch left where I will single crochet, chain 2, and single crochet. Now we're going to work up the side the same exact way that we did before. Here you're going to see the stitches look sort of backwards because we're looking at the other side of it. You're also going to see the floats on the side from where we carried up our yarn. You're going to crochet over those floats to hide them. So I'm going to work one stitch into this next stitch here and one into the hole. And that's going to be right under where this float is going to begin. So the float is just on top of my hook with the rest of the side edge there, and I'll crochet over it. The next stitch here, you're going to insert into the center of it, picking up just the 2 loops, which is hard to see because it's underneath the float. And then you have the float on your hook, and then you complete your single crochet. The next one looks like a hole, and you have the float over your hook and complete your single crochet. Then work into the side edge there, picking up 2 loops and the float and single crochet. Next one is a hole. You have the float on your hook and single crochet. Next one I'm inserting it into the center, floats there, single crochet. Next one is a hole with a float over top, and I'm single crocheting. I'll continue the same way all the way up the side here, and again, if you get lost, just make sure you're working 2 stitches per color block, and you'll have the same number of stitches on this side that you had on the other side. Once you get to a point where you've changed colors and you've fastened off your yarn, I've already woven it in here, but I have one up here where the orange is. You're just going to do it the same exact way. Here you'll work 1 stitch here, then the next stitch here with the float over your hook. Next stitch is going to be into that center stitch, and you'll just have that over your hook. If you want to weave in your ends beforehand, then you won't have this visible at all. Here in the center I've already woven it in. I tried to do some of them as I went, so that's why this one is already in the bulkiness of this color block here. But it's up to you. Either way, if you have your ends there, just push it to the side and continue crocheting as normal. Alrighty, I've just worked my last stitch here up the side, and now I'm back to the beginning where I started. I'm going to slip stitch join to the very first single crochet of the round, so I'm going to insert into the stitch as normal. Then yarn over, pull through that stitch and the loop that's on my hook. That is a slip stitch join, and I'm going to do that every round of the border. Round 1 is now complete. For my first round, I used the same buff color that I finished with, the one that's the main color throughout the whole thing. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch colors. Since I'm going to be fastening off and weaving in anyway, I'm going to go ahead and join my new color in the chain space of the corner, just like I would if I was doing a granny square. So I'm going to go ahead and fasten off this buff. Pull up on this loop to break it, and then I'm going to insert from the wrong side to the right side into that same stitch I joined to, yarn over and pull that tail end to the back. At first I thought I might want to do just simple rounds of single crochet all the way around, changing my colors along the way. This is what it looks like if I do just a regular round of single crochet there, worked into every stitch. And as I've worked, I am going to take it out and work into the back loop only using single crochets. Before I frog this, I am going to show you how to get started if you want to do rounds of single crochet worked as normal. If you're going to continue in the same color for your border, rather than fastening off here, you would just slip stitch join, chain 1, single crochet into that first single crochet, and then work your corner and continue on. And each row is going to be worked exactly the same as this next row. I want to change up my colors, so that's why I went ahead and fastened off, and I'm going to join a new color. So I'm just going to do green for now. I haven't decided if that's what it's going to be, but I'm going to go ahead and insert my hook into that chain space of the corner, and it doesn't matter what corner you start with. Then I'm going to put the yarn over it, my new color, and pull it through. I like to pull it all the way through, and then I make like the first part of a knot. Then I drop the tail end. I have the green yarn in my hand as I normally hold it. Insert my hook back into that chain space, yarn over and pull through. I have that loop there now, chain 1, and now I'm ready to officially begin. Single crochet into that chain space, chain 2, single crochet back into the same exact chain space. Then I would continue on, single crochet into each stitch all the way across the top here, or across whatever side that you have. Once I get to the other end here, I would have a single crochet here into that last single crochet, which is the first one of the corner. Then in the chain space, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and then single crochet into the next single crochet and work all the way down. You can change it up if you want, do half double crochets or double crochets, or maybe you want a single crochet into the back loop only or into the front loop only. All of it is going to give you a different look and different texture. You'll want to have the finished measurement in mind so you can measure as you work and stop when you get close to the size that you're looking for. Let's go back here to where I joined my color. Another way that you could do this is the way that I like to do it. It's just really simple. But you could also start with a single crochet. You would make a slip knot here as normal. Insert my hook into that loop. Tighten the loop up. And then go to that chain space there. Insert my hook directly into the chain space. Yarn over, pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. I've completed the very first single crochet. Then I would chain 2, single crochet into that same chain space. And then when you come around, you already have a single crochet there that you can join to. There are so many different ways that you can tie it on. These are just the 2 that I use the most often. Alright, to get started with working in the back loop only, to match the height here in the corners, I'm going to be working half double crochets. And I'm going to do it the way that I like. I'm just going to pull my tail end through and tie the first part of a knot. And I'm going to pull the loop through, chain 1, half double crochet into the chain space. To half double crochet, we yarn over, then insert the hook into the chain space as normal, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Then we'll chain 2 and half double crochet back into the same chain space, yarn over, insert my hook into the center chain space, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. I'm going to do this in every single corner so that it will match the height of the rest of the stitches. To work into the back loop only, pulling up a loop here really quick, inserting into the stitch as normal, we pick up 2 loops of that V shape. There is a front loop and then a back loop. So to work into the back loop, we insert our hook down into the center of the V shape. We push the hook to the wrong side of the fabric, and by doing that it picks up just the back loop on your crochet hook. So when you get ready to work your next stitch, which will be a single crochet in the back loop only, Insert my hook into the center of that stitch, pushing it to the back side, picking up just that back loop on my hook. Then yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through both loops as normal. Insert my hook into the center of the V shape, pushing it towards the back. I have just the back loop only on my hook. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert my hook into the center of the V shape, pushing it towards the back. I have just the back loop only on my hook, and I'll complete my single crochet. And I think I like the way that it separates it. It creates this ridge line here from the front loop being left unworked. I think I like this a little bit more than just working regular rounds of single crochet, so I'm going to go ahead and experiment with this. When I get to the next corner, I'm going to work a half double crochet, chain 2, half double crochet all into the same space, and then I'll turn my work and continue working all the way around. Once I get back to the beginning and I work my last stitch here, then I will slip stitch join to the first half double crochet. So when I get to the next corner, I'll come back on and we'll work the corner together, and then I'll go back off camera and work around until I'm ready to slip stitch, and then we'll do it together. Alright, so I have one more single crochet here before my chain space. And now I'm going to work a half double crochet, chain 2, half double crochet all into that chain space. So we'll yarn over, insert our hook into the chain space, yarn over, pull through, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Chain 2, half double crochet into the same chain space. And that's our second corner. And now I'm ready to continue working single crochet into the back loop only, all the way down the side here. But that half double crochet is going to give us just a little bit of extra length that we need, so that that stitch is going to be equal to the single crochets that are next to it. You can see the distance here where it was worked into the back loop only, and then into the chain space where the half double crochet is worked. In the event that we just worked a single crochet into this chain space here, then this corner would cave in on itself, be more rounded instead of square-like, because it doesn't have that extra length to prop it up to be the same. So to compensate, I just work a slightly taller stitch there to give me the same height, so that I have this nice square corner that I like. And I'm just going to continue working around until I get back, and then we'll slip stitch together. Alright, I've made it all the way back around. I have one more stitch here, so I'm going to work that as normal. And then I'm going to slip stitch join. And because I'm working in the back loop only, I want to continue that here. So I'm just going to insert my hook to pick up the back loop only of that first stitch. Then to complete a slip stitch, I will yarn over, pull it through that stitch and through the loop on my hook. And that's going to complete our round there. If you're going to continue the next round in the same color, you can just chain 1, first stitch in that same stitch, work into the next stitch, and then work into the chain space for your next corner in the same exact way. I am going to change colors here. You can do it in the last yarn over here when you complete your stitch, but I'm going to go ahead and fasten off and reattach my next color into the chain space, so I don't interrupt the stitch pattern as much by switching colors. I'm going to fasten off here, and then I will just join my new color in the chain space as I previously did. Here I'm going to pull up this loop to break it, then insert my hook into the stitch that we joined to from the wrong side, the back side, to the front side, which is the right side. Yarn over, pull that tail end through to the back, and now I'm ready for my next color. So I'm going to continue working all the rounds of my border off camera. I will put up a chart here showing how many rounds you should have depending on the size that you're working. And as soon as I get my border finished, I'll be back so we can weave in our ends together. Time to weave in our ends. There are going to be a few types. In the middle of our work, if you have run out of yarn and you had to attach a new ball, you're going to have 2 strands there. The first thing I'm going to do is tie it into a knot, sort of, but just one time. So loop it around and pull it through. And this is going to mimic the look of the stitches. See how it gives that V shape there, the same as the V shape next to it. It also adds a little bit extra security, one time only, so that it doesn't add bulkiness, and you don't want to pull too tight. You want it to look the same as the other stitches there. Then I'll thread my tapestry needle. I always do 3 passes for my ends. That's my magic number. If you feel comfortable after 2, you can stop there. If you don't feel secure enough and you need a 4th, go ahead and work it. It's whatever you feel the most secure with your ends. The other thing I do is I do not pick the whole entire stitch up on my needle. Here we are with the whole stitch. I insert my needle in the center of the stitch, breaking it in half. Then when I exit, I also break that in half, and that's going to help capture my yarn better. So here I'm just going to insert into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half, run under several stitches. The best way for this also is to work vertically if you can, so it doesn't prohibit any stretch widthwise. And then use your fingers to manipulate the fabric if you need to, so that all the fabric lays naturally. That's pass number 1. Insert into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half. Run back through several of the stitches I just worked, and break my last stitch in half as well. Pull on it, use my fingers to manipulate the fabric if needed. One more pass for me, inserting into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half, running up through several of the same stitches, and break my last stitch in half as well. Tug on it, manipulate the fabric by pulling with my fingers, and then I can fasten it off. I'm going to do the same thing with this end here. I have ends at the sides where I have switched colors. So here I've fastened off one color to switch to the next color. And I'm going to weave those into the bulkiness of their colorway. Same way, 3 passes. So I'm going to just insert into a nearby stitch, and in this case it's going to be the beige brown color. As long as you're not working completely through the fabric, you're not going to see it from the right side. Right now I'm on the wrong side, which is the back side. And then I'm going to run it through several of the stitches here that are the same exact color. And if you're worried about seeing it from the right side, then you can flip it around while your needle's through the stitches and see. If you can see your needle, then you're going to see your stitches. So I can see it a little bit here in the middle of the gold, but since it's the same color, that's fine for me. Insert into a nearby stitch, work back through several of those stitches there. Pull, manipulate my fabric, and 3 passes. And now I feel good about that, so I'm going to go ahead and fasten off. I'll do the same thing with this yellow here and all my other color changes that I have on the sides. The last color change we're going to have is here at the border. If you've changed colors the same way that I did, I'm going to run each of these here through the bulkiness of the corner as much as I can, because it's the best way to hide the stitches. But you might also run them vertically up through several of those stitches or across a couple of the stitches. You just want to make sure that when you pull through, you do manipulate that fabric so it's not bunched up and it lays naturally. All of them have been pulled to the wrong side, so you don't have to worry about anything. It's worked exactly the same as the other two that I showed you. I'm going to go ahead and work all these off camera because it's going to take me a little bit. Guys, thanks so much for watching my video. You'll find the free crochet pattern for this linked in the description box below. Please smash that like button and hit subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.